Hello and welcome to the International News Daily Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Dennis Dunicic. And before we begin today, I want to remind you, as always, to subscribe to our channel to stay in the loop on the most important international affairs that are occurring today. Our story today takes us to the Korean Peninsula, where North Korea has been carrying out a new series of missile tests. Now, these are actually the most significant and most militarily capable missile tests that North Korea has carried out during the administration of US President Joe Biden. Now, about a month ago, 3 weeks or about a month ago, we did a podcast and a special on another series of North Korean missile testing. Now, at the time, North Korea tested a series of ICBM train ballistic missiles. I apologize, not intercontinental, but short-range ballistic missiles that could be launched from trains. Now, today, Tuesday, North Korea successfully tested what is an SLBM, or a submarine launch ballistic missile. And this is something we actually predicted 1 month ago. The reason that North Korea has been increasing these testings is one, brinkmanship diplomacy. Now, as we stated before, brinkmanship diplomacy is a type of tactic in international relations or global affairs where one actor on the side of a conflict intentionally tries to increase tensions to make it seem like things are going to the breaking point. And right before the breaking point, both sides are willing to sit down on the negotiating table and discuss a diplomatic resolution. Now, keep in mind, North Korea is a heavily sanctioned country. United States-led economic sanctions and trade sanctions have crippled the economy of North Korea. And North Korea wants these sanctions lifted. They want to be open for trade. And this is coming from the North Korean government. They want to make sure that their people are able to have a little bit better and a little bit more economic means. And this does not come from the goodness of their hearts, but any government needs to ensure its people a relatively decent economic lifestyle to prevent its people from revolting or wanting significant change. Now, in addition to this, North Korea has been motivated to carry out not just missile tests, but to increase its military capabilities, because in the last 2 years, North and South Korea have entered a very quiet and informal arms race. And it should be stated right now that North Korea has criticized South Korea for being extremely hypocritical. And to North Korea's credit, it is. South Korea has presented itself as the calm, diplomatic option on the Korean Peninsula. And notably today, after North Korea's missile tests, South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff, the military Joint Chiefs of Staff for South Korea, sat down and gave a very diplomatically worded, almost somber, kind of sad statement, saying they deeply regret these tests and feel that it's only promoting destabilization in the region and that they want to reach out to North Korea. But that's actually not how South Korea has been behaving. South Korea has also been developing its military. South Korea has, in the past few years, also been going through with extensive military testing. In addition to this, it has been doing joint military exercises with the United States while growing its military. It should be noted that South Korea, as a country, has an obligatory draft, which most South Koreans have to actually partake in, and it lasts about 2 years. That is something that tends to go underreported on. And when talking about the two Koreas, North Korea is viewed as this heavy, authoritarian, militaristic country, which it absolutely is, and South Korea is viewed as this almost Japanese-like, peaceful, quaint diplomatic option, which it is more than North Korea, but it's still extremely militaristic. Now, North Korea has been doing this to maintain its arms race with South Korea and to bring the United States back to the negotiating table. And the three major countries that are involved in any problems that occur with North Korea have all reacted. South Korea, as I mentioned before, stated that it deeply regrets what's going on. Japan has issued a maritime warning for ships in the region that are east of the Sinpo area. And we're going to go over Sinpo and the Sinpo coast in just a short bit, but let's go over the reactions of the other countries. Japan has, using back channels, stated and formally complained to the government of North Korea and asked them why they're doing these military testings. Now, I want to explain what a back channel is. A diplomatic back channel is typically used between countries that do not have formal diplomatic recognitions or relations between each other. Japan and North Korea do not have any formal line of communication or diplomacy. So when a Japanese government official wants to talk to a North Korean government official or conduct diplomacy, they have to go through what's known as back channels, or different forms that are unofficial to communicate with one another. What Japan did is they informed their ambassador in Beijing to China to contact the North Korean ambassador in Beijing in China and have a conversation with them between the relevant government officials on what's going on. Now, the United States has also given an official reaction, stating that these current military tests do not pose any kind of immediate threat to the United States, its military assets, or any of its allies in the region. But the United States also stated that this is contributing to destabilization in the region, and that North Korea should instead be focusing on having diplomatic talks. Now, the United States has, in the past month, been pushing to actually have diplomatic talks with North Korea. However, North Korea has actually, despite the fact that many people believe this is their goal, has stated that it feels that this is just a ploy. And there's a reason. Because the United States has stated that any form of diplomatic talks that it would have with North Korea would be without any preconditions, which means that they wouldn't expect anything from North Korea, but the United States also wouldn't expect anything from itself. Now, less than 2 years ago, the US, North Korea, and South Korea were having diplomatic talks to create the denuclearization of North Korea and lift the sanctions on North Korea. However, as I mentioned on our last episode regarding the Korean Peninsula, North Korea offered something completely irrelevant that would not lead to its denuclearization whatsoever. They offered to get rid of an old nuclear testing facility, which it planned on retiring anyways. And North Korea was expecting to have virtually almost all of the trade and economic sanctions on it lifted. Now, this simply was not acceptable to, at the time, Donald Trump's administration, and it certainly isn't acceptable to the current Joe Biden administration. Now, the United States is hoping to sit back down with North Korea and to have these diplomatic talks again. And hopefully this time North Korea is going to be more willing to give concrete, or to do a concrete process on its denuclearization process. Now, let's finally talk about the real threat of what's going on. The media tends to present any form of nuclear or military testing that is occurred or carried out by North Korea as extremely dangerous, and it causes a panic amongst the people in South Korea, in Japan, and in the United States. Many people believe that every time North Korea carries out some kind of missile test or some kind of military test or nuclear test, that they have reached some extreme level of military might and ability and capability. That is not the case. Now, I want to note that submarines, especially submarines that are nuclearly capable, or those that are capable and able to deliver a nuclear payload, especially through an ICBM, are extremely dangerous. One, they are hard to detect. They're extremely quiet. Two, they're just generally stealthy. Three, they have the ability, because of this stealth and quietness, to get very close to their targets. And four, if equipped with the proper ballistic systems, can launch heavy payloads to destroy enemy targets, and these enemy targets have a very short window of opportunity to properly react. Now, that being said, North Korea is very far from having any form of nuclearly capable submarine fleet. Keep in mind, North Korea is a country that has a massive amount of economic and trade sanctions. North Korea is a country that is technologically behind the rest of the world. North Korea is a country that is militarily behind the rest of the world. In order for North Korea, and it is possible for them to eventually have this submarine fleet be part of its military assets, it is going to take years, if not decades, of economic growth, technological advancement, and military progress for them to be able to do so. The United States Indo-Pacific Command Center, when they stated this does not represent any immediate threat to us, was absolutely correct. And before we finally end our report, I want to state where this missile testing occurred. It occurred off the coast of Sinpo. Now, Sinpo is a city in North Korea. It has a population of about 150 to 160,000 people. But Sinpo is very important to North Korea. It is a major military asset. Sinpo has historically been used for the development and research of North Korean submarines, but recently it has also become or has begun to be used in the development of ballistic missile testings, and more specifically those that fit on submarines. And the reason that I mentioned this region is, again, I do believe that North Korea is doing these tests simply to bring the United States back to the negotiating table and have economic sanctions lifted from them. But I do feel that they are not going to be willing to negotiate anytime soon until they feel they have enough leverage. Now, Kim Jong-un, as I mentioned before, stated that he is going to build an invincible military to be able to fight the United States, and is also believing that the United States' offer to have diplomatic talks for now is just a ploy to destroy or to sabotage North Korea. So what's probably going to happen is we're going to see more submarine and missile testing from the Sinpo region, which is on the northeastern side of North Korea. It's a region that should be followed. It's one that we're going to keep following and reporting on. And let us know what you think. How do you feel that this situation is going to resolve itself? Do you think there is going to be a diplomatic solution? Do you think that the arms race between North and South Korea is going to continue? Do you think the United States is going to be willing to capitulate and actually lift some sanctions on North Korea? And finally, do you think, and this is the biggest question, will North Korea ever be willing to give up its nuclear weapons? Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you next time.